This is Wedding DJ School, your guide to the business of a wedding DJ. We're talking with leaders in the wedding entertainment industry. You're going to hear their backstories, how they got started, and where they are today. Hey, it's Josh Mitchell. After today's episode, there's just one more left in Season 2. Then we're going to take a break to prepare for Season 3. If you have any questions, topics, or anything you want to suggest, you can record a voice memo on your phone and email that to josh@weddingdjschool.com. Or you can reply to any of the Action Guide emails, which you can get for free by texting Wedding DJ to 44222. Brian Buonassissi is today's guest. He goes by DJ Brian B and runs B-Boy Productions. He's an industry veteran of 20 plus years. He started as a nightclub DJ and transitioned to private events. He caught the eye of Hollywood and soon began mixing celebrity private bashes. His list of high-profile clients includes Elton John, P. Diddy, Snoop Dogg, Gwyneth Paltrow, Tony Hawk, Jim Carrey, ESPN X Games, The Dr. Phil Show, and more. Today, we're going to reveal his secrets to becoming a world-class DJ. You're going to learn some key business takeaways and how to think through music programming, and of course, Brian's backstory and how he got to where he is today. I asked Brian to start us off with his 15-second bio, so here he is.
15-second bio would be, for me, a traveling DJ who focuses on luxury private events.
And how long have you been doing that? When did you get into this?
Gosh, I started my business in I started my business in 1996, right out of high school. So I made some huge mistakes through that process, obviously learned a lot. But then I would say I didn't really get into the luxury destination space until closer to 2011. From about 2006, so about 10 years in, I started doing more of the traveling side of things, but I hadn't hit the luxury market until closer to 2010.
Awesome. Have you ever DJ'd for anybody worth noting?
Oh, yeah. Gosh, so many. Dr. Phil Show. I did some stuff with Snoop Dogg, P. Diddy, just some private event stuff that they were the headliners. I was the opener act. Kid Rock, Tony Hawk, the skater. I've done movie premieres, rap parties, things like that. So yeah, it's run the gamut.
That's awesome. And I'm thinking of the person who's on the front end of their journey right now, where they hear that you're successful, that you're doing luxury things, that you've really in some ways kind of made it as a DJ. What was that like for you coming out of high school? What kind of attracted you to this industry or being a DJ? Take me back to the beginning part of your journey and just tell me what that was like.
Yeah. So I was always in a musical family. My parents played instruments, and so actually I can remember this distinctly. When I was like 4 years old, my parents said, "Listen, you're gonna play a musical instrument. We can pick it for you, or you can pick it. So what do you want to do?" So my mom was a piano player, so I kind of just gravitated towards that because we had a piano in the house, and so I was in conservatory classes at 4 years old, playing piano and learning just classical music and time signatures and everything, which you wouldn't think would apply to DJing, but that all has importance as we get into the story a bit. But fast forward, out of high school, I was super into music. I was playing in the church band for a little while, and then I met some people who wanted to start a cover band. And at that time, 96, disco was actually making a comeback, a lot of cover bands. So I was in a disco cover band, of all things, which is ironic because I didn't know any of that music, literally none of it. My parents were super conservative when it came to music. And I mean, we were getting risque when I was listening to like John Denver or, Willie Nelson. You know what I mean? Like that was the pinnacle. So when I got into this disco cover band, I was discovering music. It was learning for me. And it was one of the best crash courses in music I could have ever had, because I'll never forget the first time I heard September by Earth, Wind and Fire. And I'm like, this song is pretty cool. And then I saw the reaction in the crowd and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a gold mine. How have I never heard this song before? But in the process, I was in a 16-piece cover band, 16 pieces. We didn't play private events. We played bars. And that doesn't go very far in a 16-piece. You are doing it for the the passion of the music, not so much the paycheck. And I quickly found that out when I thought I could do this full time, and I was clearing maybe $80 a night if we were lucky, and by the time I paid for gas and I'm out till 3 or 4 in the morning, and then I'm learning songs, bringing all my gear. I mean, you're talking about a 10-hour day by the time I finally got to bed for $60, doesn't go very far. So when my credit card bill came in month 3, I was like, this isn't going to work because there's no way I can pay this. Like, it's crazy. So one of the places we played actually had like a Sunday acoustic disco, which is kind of weird, but it was kind of cool. We actually had bongos. I was on a Rhodes keyboard. We had a singer and an acoustic bass and I think acoustic guitar. So we had like a 4-piece. And this was in a town called San Clemente, California. Very much a beach town in California that is like kind of still on tap to this day. They don't have a whole lot of it. The entertainment scene isn't what you would think of in like what it is today. So anyway, they were looking for a DJ. And they said, we're changing up our entertainment. No one's doing DJ here. And my first question was, how much does it pay? Because I wanted to get an idea if this was worth jumping ship for. And I think it was hilarious. It was like $250 in cash. Plus they had a kitchen, so you get a free salad, which is kind of interesting. So I was like, ooh, awesome. Salad and $200, better than 80. So I faked it till I made it. I basically just said, I have a decent record collection and I'm going to make this work. And so this was pre-YouTube. There was no tutorials on. So I'm calling on friends that I knew who were, fantastic DJs that was leaning on them, just like, show me the basics, whatever. The tricky part was there was no precedent set. This wasn't a club that I was walking into as a talent. I mean, we're literally ground floor trying to figure this out. There was not even a club within 20 miles. So we're setting it. And the thing is this particular spot in San Clemente, it was a hodgepodge of the most eclectic group of people. Because one week you might have all tourists. The next week it's military because we're close to Camp Pendleton. The next week it's like locals. You just never knew what you're going to get. So to set a specific style or, hey, this is going to be a hip hop club or whatever, you're going to alienate a crowd at some point. And so it's funny, like now it's trendy to be like open format. Like that's a buzzword in our industry, especially in the club space. And I was doing that. Like I had to do that because I wasn't going to lose people. And this space was, I'm telling you, it was like a studio apartment sized restaurant to the point where literally what would happen is they would have a changeover from dinner to dancing, like around 10 o'clock. So at 9:30, they'd serve their last table. And what would happen is they'd take all these tables and put them on the outside porch. And then they took the pool table and put it towards one corner, and they put a piece of plywood over it. And I was on top of this pool table on plywood. And so, I tried to make it a little bit classy and put like a black, linen on the plywood to at least like give it some kind of semblance of a stage. And I would start it off. Now, I think there was a little bit of a luck in place here because us being the first one to do anything, the first night we had a line around the door, like people clamoring to get in. And I sucked. I was terrible. I mean, I couldn't mix to save my life. I'm just like, I would try to stay on beat. And then as soon as I'd hear it get off, fade down and into the next track. But it was the best learning. I'm going to date myself here, but I was recording onto a tape cassette recorder my mixes just so I could get better and listen back. And that was a huge thing for me, was being able to record those sets. I think I still have them somewhere in the archives, but like listening back, I go, wow, there's some things I could fix, things I could tweak. But within, I would say, 4 months, I had gotten way better because I'd been playing every week for 5 to 6 hours a night. Fast forward, I literally, the night was going so well that they moved the karaoke night that they had on Friday nights. I was playing Saturdays. Fridays, they moved those to Thursdays, and they had me do Friday, Saturday. So now I'm getting 10 hours a weekend, beyond what I'm practicing. Then it got so big that they moved the karaoke night again. They moved it to Wednesday. Now I'm doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Thursday's ladies' night. So I was playing, 15 hours a week, just in the club. I could say that loosely, air quotes, club. But, getting all kinds of experience doing that really laid the groundwork for my career moving forward.
Yeah, so when we think about this idea of, DJs have to do their time, this is kind of what you're talking about here. It's like you need to put in the hours. Malcolm Gladwell made famous kind of that idea of the 10,000 hours before you really become a master. He didn't come up with that idea. He was citing somebody else's research, but it really is true that before you become great at something, you have to spend those hours in the bedroom or in the bar or wherever honing your craft. And I think he even mentioned the Beatles, way before they were ever even discovered, were playing in restaurants and bars for like 10 years or something before they ever actually started getting discovered. And I'm not a Beatle, like I don't know all the specifics of the history, but it's that principle of doing your time. So as you think back on that moment, besides listening to your tapes, that's a great takeaway I think for people is listen back to yourself. Like if you're going to make other people listen to you, whether it's you on the microphone or you on, behind the turntables or your laptop or whatever, you should probably endure it as well, just to hear what they were experiencing. What were some other takeaways that you maybe learned during those early days before you transitioned to, growing that even further?
Yeah. So you kind of hit on it with the 10,000 hours. And I think a lot of people misinterpret that quote a lot because I jumped in. I didn't have the 10,000 hours yet. And I think it handicaps a lot of people because they hear that quote and they go, you know what? I got to be in my bedroom for 10,000 hours before I even go play out anywhere. And my advice is you got to jump into the water, right? And obviously within reason. I mean, I'm not jumping into, a $50,000 contract with somebody saying I got the skills and I've never played. But I knew it was a place where you had a mutual understanding with the bar owner that, listen, I'm cutting my teeth here. We're going to grow this together and we're both going to win, in this. And because I knew myself that I had the discipline to put in the time, not just at the bar, but like ahead of that, like at home, I'm researching music, and again, this was pre-pools being on MP3s on sites and things like that. I'm having to go to the store and buy CDs and burn them. And back in those days, burning a CD wasn't like 10x speed. We're talking 1x speed, maybe 2x. So it was going to take me half a day just to burn one CD that'd be playing for that night. It got better as the years went on. But like initially, that's where it started, And actually, I was starting on vinyl before then. So like, if I didn't have it, I didn't have it. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like right on the cusp of that Napster kind of time period. But I would say that you got to jump in the water is a big piece of advice because so many people get handicapped by this, like, I'm not ready. Right. And if you jump in, you can always adjust and you can always fix it, but you got to make the leap and just go for it.
Yeah. And nobody said that you can't get paid for your 10,000 hours. So we're not saying that you have to do 10,000 hours of unpaid work in isolation. Like you can get out there in the community, connect with the right people. And like you said, I think that's a great takeaway. Kind of have that mutual understanding with the event planner or the meeting planner or the venue owner, whoever that person is. And if they know, like, and understand what you're trying to do and that you're trying to grow a business, you're trying to become a better DJ, they'll probably be willing to work with you because they know that you're not just doing it for a quick win, but that you're in it for the longevity. So I love that you had that mutual understanding. And even at that early in your career, understanding the importance of, hey, you got to make friends with the other people in the industry. It's not like you just become a DJ and hope that you get hired. You've got to make friends with the owner of the venue. What else comes to mind just as you think back on that?
Well, I think also it's in the similar vein, like, what is it? Under promise, over deliver kind of a thing. So I wasn't building myself up to be, hey, I'm Steve Aoki or, some guy that I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I was pretty transparent with that. And then, taking some risks, like jumping into that was a risk anyway, but I'm talking more musically. Like sometimes, literally I was jumping into the unknown. I had no idea formatting wise what was going to happen. I think another big thing for me was just making sure that I was checking in with some mentors, and I'm not thinking necessarily business mentors, but just like DJ mentors of the formatting side. I was listening to so many mixes back then. I bought so many mixtapes. I was even, back then I was very introverted. Actually, I still kind of am. So like, even though my job is extroverted now, like I turn that on and off, but I prefer like if in my perfect day off, it's like blinds closed, just totally in my cave. But right. But I realized that the microphone was important too, to the experience. And so, I was looking for any kind of live concert experience from like some of the rap artists and, just any of the concert goers are like, what are they doing in their live shows to amplify it outside of just the music? And I would go to nightlife spots and watch DJs who were, not overkilling it on the microphone, but kind of adding to it. So I learned the importance of, I call it crowd hype, but talking on the mic, as well as the balance of how to format the night. Because honestly, like when I first started, I remember just, my goal was to keep the dance floor packed. So I was hitting them with bangers after banger after banger as far as tracks go. But what I didn't realize is that was, one, it was going to kill my floor eventually because you can't keep that pace up. You just can't. Secondly, it was hurting the bar because their goal is not to keep a dance floor full. Their goal is to sell drinks. And if I wasn't turning that dance floor to get to the bar, then they're not making money either. So I learned a lot of lessons through that early stage that I still carry into my events to this day, like how to format, how to turn the crowd around so that you have somebody who's just like, a lot of what I do now is private event work. So the range is 8 to 80 as far as age group sometimes. And what works for the 8-year-old may not work for the 80-year-old. So you have to be able to like make sure that they get involved in the process. So I learned a lot of those lessons, surprisingly through the bar.
Wow. Yeah, I love it. And I just love that even from that early in your journey, you were working with other people, realizing that it's not all about you, but that if you want to make it and if you want to stay in the industry, you've got to figure out the goals of the other person. And that whole mindset, I mean, like there's entire books just written on that topic of how do you figure out what the other person's goal is and then channel what you're doing to be able to help them accomplish their goals. And that's how you make friends. That's how if you want to stay in the business and you want to, do a good job, if you can help other people accomplish their goals, you will go a long way in whatever industry you choose. So I love that advice. And we're still talking about, when you're DJing in bars. So when did that transition for you? When did you stop doing that and start doing whatever was next?
Yeah. So what ended up happening was, the bar life, it's funny because like it's that 21 to, the median age probably in a bar is 25, 26. Well, that's also around the time when people start kind of getting serious about life and they're about to get married and things like that. So I was getting a lot of bar patrons who were entering that latter phase and ready to get married. And all they knew was they wanted the environment to be similar to the bar from the party aspect, because we were, like I told you before, it was like a studio apartment size, as far as the bar goes, and every night it's packed and everyone's making money. I mean, the environment, I think it helped that the room was so small because it made it look like it was just insane every night that we'd have it. And it didn't take, but I don't know, 200 people in there to make that the case. Other clubs, when you have these mega clubs, you got to get 1,000 in there to make it feel like somewhat busy. It didn't take much. So I think it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors there, but the point is the environment was such that people were like, I want that for my wedding. So they'd say, hey, could you do my wedding? Well, I'd never done a wedding before. So all I knew is there was, the ceremony. I didn't even know any of the formalities. I didn't know there was a first dance. I didn't know any of this because growing up, honestly, I was in like maybe 3 weddings of my life. I had been a ring bearer in all of them. My friends were not getting married yet. I mean, I was 18 years old when I started in that bar. Funny little side. When I first started, I'll never forget that we had a capacity issue. And so the cops came to kind of, check on things, whatever. And I'm 18 and I'm in this bar and it's 21 or over. So I remember literally mixing like kind of like underneath the decks with just my hands. Like you couldn't even see my face. You know what I mean? Just trying to make it work, and hoping I wouldn't get thrown out. Because then I was like, oh my gosh, if the party dies, like they're gonna just boo me like crazy. And so I made that happen. But anyway, I guess it was just a point where I was trying to figure out like, because I had no wedding experience. I just knew how to do a party. So I did my first wedding, and I can't even remember what I charged. I think I charged what I was charging at the bar, which at the time I think had grown to $500. So I was making decent money. And man, I want to go back to that couple. I don't even remember who it was, but just to apologize, because I'm used to selling, saying what the drink specials are. I'm not talking about a person's first dance or a cake cut. So I had enough foresight to know that I've got to get some experience under my belt doing these weddings if I'm going to do them. And so, and I had enough requests from bar patrons that were wanting me to do it that it made sense for me to do it. So I latched on to a guy that I knew through my days at Pioneer, which that's a whole nother story, but that was a mobile DJ, and he ran the Disney account, which is a pretty big deal. So I latched on. I said, hey, listen, what I bring to the table is mixing experience. Most of the wedding DJs, especially at that time, they weren't coming from the bar scene. They weren't coming from the mixing world. It was all about, at that time period, this is again like probably 98, 99, 2000. It was about interactiveness, doing games. I call it a little bit of cheese, so it was kind of like that kind of vibe. Mixing was secondary. No one cared. And I'm even talking about the patrons too, those who were getting married, the clients, the guests, they were all about like entertain me. It was like, wanting like a variety show kind of experience, not the music experience, except for those that grew up who the younger kids going to the bars and stuff. They wanted the party. They could care less about all that. So my training was from this guy. I said, listen, I'll bring the mixing experience for you. If you can teach me the other side, let's sign a little bit of a contract and stay in for like 6 months, and I'll help you and you can help me. Totally worked out. I was doing all their grad nights. Now all of a sudden they were getting into school dances that I could mix for them because they didn't have anybody who could do them before. So it was a win-win. Meanwhile, I'm learning all the formalities, how to actually make announcements. And I was doing weddings in Disney. I had no idea how big that was as far as, people wanting to have their wedding at Disney. I mean, I always thought of it as a kid place, kid playground, but no, like adults, they have their weddings there all the time, and they're during the week. So I was doing a lot of weekday weddings, sometimes 2 in a day, and making double what I would make at the bar and doing that one wedding. So like I was making, I think like $1,000 per wedding. So it was like $2,000 a day. And I'm like, I could, this is fantastic. So to add that to my bar stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
So wait, like, so am I understanding this correctly that you were DJing weddings at Disney before you got into being a wedding DJ, like a mobile wedding DJ?
Correct. Before starting my own business, all of that. That was cutting my teeth on that.
And so just even like, just let's linger there for a second. What were some of the lessons that you were learning doing these Disney weddings?
Oh my gosh, so many. The biggest one though I can give you is that it taught me how to program within a box. Disney, believe it or not, I think they've lessened it a little bit since, but it was very conservative. They could not, you never hear a cast member is what they call their employees, right? So you never hear a cast member cuss or curse. They're clean as a whistle. You don't see Cinderella smoking, right. At least not, in front of guests or anything like that. So same thing musically. They carried that all the way through the company. So I had to have my playlist approved essentially. And so what they did was they made books that they would give their clients, their wedding clients, and they had to pick from these books of what songs they could have played. Unfortunately, anything like that was current in that year wasn't going to be on the list because they'd print these like the year before, like the December going into the following year. That's what they had to pick from, and they wouldn't pick. So I don't think that would fly today because music's changes so fast now. But back then, people were still buying CDs. It was all about albums and things like that. So you could kind of get away with it. But it was really, and even within the classic stuff, like there was parameters. Like I can remember like Snoop Dogg and all of that. no, couldn't play any rap. It had to be, if I was playing rap, it had to be instrumental versions. Like it couldn't be anything that had words. Even if it was clean, they wouldn't allow it to happen. So I felt so handicapped, but it was great lesson in, okay, this is the box I'm played in. How can I still make this an amazing party with these tools? And it was a challenge. I actually liked it because it forced me to have to think differently than just my standard, like go to the nightlife, play whatever I want.
Right. What other, I'm just curious before we move on, because this is just fascinating to me. What else did that situation look like? So they would give the book to the client. They would kind of check off what songs they wanted. And then would you just show up with a controller? Did you have to bring extra equipment? What was that like?
Yeah, so those days, equipment hadn't dropped in price. Everything was still pretty pricey. So the mobile op that I was working with, they essentially provided all the gear for me to use. So I was essentially renting from them every time. And the other thing about it, too, was Disney weddings are formatted super different than any other wedding. I mean, the couple typically arrives by horse and carriage. You know, they have photo ops with Mickey and Minnie, and we're talking like 40-year-olds. And I'm like, this is like, it was almost embarrassing to watch, you know. But like, hey, to each their own, whatever. And then like there was certain formalities that was just part of a Disney wedding. Like for instance, when they would do food service, they all came out to the song "Be My Guest," and they had a little routine they did when they dropped the food at the exact same time. Like it was like clockwork. So. Again,
and were you the one that was running the music and production for all of that, or was there a separate media person?
No, I was all that. So the costume folks, obviously, they took care of that aspect of it. But there would always be a Disney planner. And that was the other thing, too, is like, I think you could get really comfortable in that environment because it was turnkey. Right. Like you didn't have to think about it, whatever. And I think at some point that was why I wanted to get out of it, because I felt like stifled.
Sure.
Like there's only so much room in this box. I'd explored every part of the box to try to like figure out, put my own stamp on it. And my creativity and just like artistry was, and it's not always about that. I realized it. I was like, okay, listen, I could push the envelope here, but like, this is what they want.
Right.
Like they're literally picking this for this, and I need to honor what they're looking for. And
right, but you were ready for something more. You wanted to push the envelope.
Right.
You wanted to, to go further. And so keep going with your story. This is just so interesting. I wanted to pause there before we moved on, just for context.
Sure.
That, you really cutting your teeth, doing those hours. Part of those hours for you were even at Disney before kind of branching off and growing it from there. So let's just keep continuing where we left off.
Sure. So ironically, and this is where a stroke of luck sometimes just comes into place. The person running the karaoke on now it was Wednesday nights, was the marketing director at Pioneer Electronics, or what they're called Pioneer Pro DJ, their division. At the time, karaoke was the king for their company. They were bringing in like $60 million on their karaoke product. But what was happening was other countries were making these products cheaper. And so they were getting killed because no one was going after these Chinese companies because there's not a whole lot of assets there. But you hear Pioneer, all of a sudden you got Car Audio at the time and Plasmas, and you're like, ooh, they have big pockets. So we had to go through a lot more regulations and like protocol than anybody else because we had big pockets. So anyway, they had to figure out a way. They're like, this karaoke thing is going to go away because we just can't make it any cheaper. We can't do anything. Like the cost of business is precluding us from going any further now because people are making it cheaper and whatever. So they said, we want to parlay some of our technologies and get into the DJ business because they saw that was still really fresh. So the guy saw that I had taken over 2 of his nights because they had been moved. His karaoke nights had been moved. And he's like, listen, would you be interested in trying this DJ product? And it's CDs. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it was going to take me forever to burn CDs. So I said, it's going to take me a while to get to that place where I can play this place with those. But yeah, I'll definitely take it as a loan and use it and give you feedback. So he came in one night, saw it was packed, and saw me using it, and I had gotten really comfortable with it. So he's like, "Hey, why don't you come in the office and talk to our product development team, and would you be willing to go on the trade show circuit and kind of show this to other DJs. And I was like, yeah, why not? So I started to move into that direction. And at the same time, I was still getting my degree because I never felt like this was going to be a full-time career, to be quite frank with you. It kind of just evolved into that, organically. I loved music. I loved the fact that in my mind, I told myself, okay, this is going to be like middle of 20s. I'm going to probably be moving on from this. This is a hobby. At least that's what I had thought. I never thought I could make this a full-time career. So I was getting my degree in marketing. They saw that as a bonus as well. So they brought me into the office. Now, all of a sudden, I'm a marketing department we had 3 people, myself, the other guy who was the director, and then we had an assistant that we shared. And so we divide and conquered. He took on the sales marketing and the artist relations. And my job was to do what they call channel marketing, which is, in the niche. I was doing all of the websites, promotions, trade shows, all of the stuff. I was under my umbrella. And so part of our marketing strategy was to get this into Hollywood, because our thought was if we can get Hollywood to start embracing this technology, which they're all about trying to find the newest and greatest thing, and get product placement done, then people will see this as legitimate. So we started pushing this I started going to all the production meetings I could in Hollywood, trying to get our product in there. And then I would, under the table, hopefully they're not listening to this, but I would be like, hey, listen, we'll give you our product for free. And the only thing I would like to ask in return is that I would DJ the rap party for this particular movie. So all of a sudden I kind of and I wasn't even getting paid for it. I was literally a trade. I probably would have been fired if I would have gotten paid on it. So I just did it for experience and to elevate my own brand, right? And I didn't even realize I was doing that at the time, but I just was looking for opportunities to play better parties. So all of a sudden, now I'm doing rap parties for TV shows and movies and all this stuff, and I'm getting into the Hollywood scene just by, again, if you trace it back to where it started at the nightlife, and again, it was me jumping into that pool and saying, I'm going to try it. Who knew it would lead to all of this, right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, now I'm in the Hollywood pool playing all these crazy parties with awesome people and just experiences that I never would have ever thought. And so it was at that point that I kind of decided, I'm done with the Disney thing. I'm going to get into doing my own business, if you will, and booking it all under myself. So our contract had expired anyways. I didn't renew, and all of a sudden now I'm a full-fledged business person. I'm doing my bar stuff still. That was my bread and butter. And then, weddings here and there. And then, a lot of social events at the time, and working with brands like Paul Mitchell, different people like that, because people would tell other people, and all of a sudden I'm in there. And I was working at Pioneer as well. So it was all kind of happening. And then at some point, again, this is where youthfulness kind of came into play. I didn't realize that the reason why I was getting booked on all these jobs was because of my Pioneer connection. And not knowing that, I put in my notice at Pioneer because I was like, this is a job if I was 50, this would be a great job. But I want to DJ. This is what I want to do right now with my life. And so I went into it, and the phones quit ringing all of a sudden. No one was calling me. And I'm like, what? You literally, I call these people, and they're like, yeah, we're not getting the product placement anymore. So no, we're not going to use you. We're going to use somebody else or whatever. So I didn't realize the contingency was there. And it was kind of under, never brought up. And when I was initially doing it, it was just kind of understood. And again, that's youthfulness on my part of not seeing that ahead of time. So now I'm struggling, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have my private events have totally dried up. I don't have the Disney account anymore. I can't count on that. I'm literally back to the bars. And I was kind of over that particular bar because I've been there for now. It was gosh, where were we at? 5 or 6 years, 3 nights a week. It's a lot. So I started putting my name out to bigger clubs and getting booked in places like in LA and Hollywood. And there was a place in Orange County that I was the resident. So I was doing better clubs to the point where at some point, through my connections, through Pioneer and having played in, big cities, I was getting flown out to play at some of these other clubs that were, bigger clubs as an opener or whatever. Not making great money, but still I was getting booked and whatever. So I was like, gosh, I want to do this full time. How am I going to make this happen? Because now I need a day job.
Right.
So I did a plethora of day jobs, and now my DJing career went backseat and took a weekend job. Right. Exactly. And I was so bummed because I found that was my passion. I enjoyed the music. I enjoyed that. I had to figure out and crack the nut of how can I make this full time, doing it myself. And so I just kept looking for opportunities. And so for like 2 or 3 years, I was kind of in this lull of it being back burner, and I could not crack the nut. And at some point, through my connections at Pioneer, there was a nightlife spot that was opening in Florida, or actually had been around in Florida, and they were looking for a resident DJ. And so I applied thinking, what's the worst that can happen? And I had lived in Southern California most of my life at that point, and they took me. They brought me out there.
Wow.
And so I had a $40,000 salary, which at the time, you know, it was crazy to think that they're giving a DJ 40 grand. I think it actually was bigger than that. It was maybe been 50 anyway. And my slot was 11 at night until 4 in the morning. And that was my slot. So I had all day to kind of do whatever. So they gave me 2 weeks to move out there and be ready for spring break, because it was a spring break haven in Florida. I didn't know what I was doing, so I literally found my place on Craigslist and moved out there. And I got there for night 1 of spring break. I had never played a spring, like California has spring breaks, but it was never to the level of like MTV spring breaks, which is what this was happening, because we were in Panama City Beach, which was crazy to say the least. I mean, it's just what I saw was just unbelievable. So anyway, I was playing these clubs, and it was a different experience than the clubs I played before, because in California, bars close at 2. There, they're open till 4. And I was starting at 11, so I'm playing, what was that, 1, 2, 3, 5-hour slot, which normally I'd only had to play like 2-hour slot or 3-hour at the most. So I'm playing 5 hours, 6 nights a week. So I had to really it was kind of what was cool about this, now looking back, is I'm constantly learning through this. Every phase is another learning opportunity that you get. So now I'm learning how to program a club for 5 hours, 6 nights a week. And through that, it took me like 2 months to just get comfortable standing on my feet for 5 hours in the same spot. At least at a wedding, you're kind of moving around, whatever. Right. I'm in the same spot, and I mean, I just remember going, I can't stand for another, like any day off I had, which was one day, I was literally in bed because I was just like so sore from just standing. And so I asked the bartender, I said, hey, listen, I'm young, but like I'm ready to make more money. How can I make that happen? And he suggested me doing private events. And he's like, this is a small enough town. They end at 10 o'clock because everybody wants to do it outside. There's a noise ordinance. Your shift doesn't start till 11. You could easily make this happen. So I latched onto an event planner out there, and met with a client. And that first meeting was like a jaw dropper, because I come in, not a suit, but like slacks, a tie, have this meeting. And this planner was like, I was just asking normal questions that I would have asked at a Disney, consult or any other kind of consult that I would have with a client. And when the client left, she's like, that was the most amazing. Like, I don't even ask some of those questions. Like, wow. How are you? And I'm thinking, this is just normal. Like, I would have never gotten the job in California like this. And it was really crazy, because she said half the time, first of all, she's like, people who come into these meetings at the DJ, she said they literally have a trucker hat on. You're lucky if they even have a collared shirt on. It's usually a t-shirt. She's like, it's almost embarrassing for us, because our brand's she was saying her brand was kind of high. And then the other thing is, we don't know if they're going to show up. If they get a better gig, get a paying gig, they may not even show to our events. Right. I'm like, you're kidding me. Like, I can't even believe this. So as you can imagine, I quickly rose up the ranks to being asked to be, do all of these private events, to the point where I quit the bar life, because I was like, this is where I enjoy myself. I'm done at 10 o'clock. I don't have to wait till 4 in the morning to get home, and then in bed by 6. And I wasn't that, like, I hadn't even hit my 30s yet. So I was like, this is kind of where I want to be, is like doing these and I was getting paid way more. So I'm like, let me just do this. And so then I started building this foray of getting into the multi-op world, which is in DJ terminology, as you know, like multiple DJs working for you. Meanwhile, I still had clients still calling me every now and then from California. So that's kind of where, like at 2006, when I moved out there, was right when I started kind of doing the traveling thing. Because now I'm going back to California and doing some events. Well, fast forward, all of a sudden, now I'm getting in Florida. It's a very much a destination hub, right, of people who come from all walks of life and all destinations, and they want the beach. So now I'm getting people who are from New York coming here, and they're saying, "Hey, can you come do my sister's wedding in New York City?" Da, da, da. So I started getting pulled in all of these directions, and I loved it. I mean, and it was hard because back then, again, we still were on CDs up to like 2007. So I'm bringing my there's no rental houses for gear, so I'm bringing this big old controller, and it wasn't even controllers back then. They were individual pieces. There was 2 players and a mixer, so I have them in flight cases. I'm hoping that they make it on the plane, all this little stuff. And I started the traveling DJ multi-op world through that experience.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's crazy, right?
I'm trying to figure out how to follow up next after all of that, because I'm thinking of the person who's listening to this and they're saying, "Wow, I didn't have all these great experiences. I wasn't as well connected as Brian was, or maybe I'm not, but I'm still thinking that there's something that they can pull out from the way that you behaved, because I think that's what's so key, and that's the thread that kind of seems consistent in your story, which is your professionalism and your excellence, even from the moment that you were working with the bar and the venue when you first got started. You recognized that you played a role in the bigger picture of everything happening, and that right. seems to be something that has kept you propelling forward to grow really now your career. But it wasn't even it's just that is who you were, kind of representing yourself in a professional way, and just trying to go above and beyond to understand what the goals are. So even as you worked with that wedding planner to say, "Hey, well, I have some questions, and I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna look nice." So I think those are all great takeaways for the person right now that's wondering, what can I get out of this for tomorrow? It's like, no, you can show up. You might not be super confident, but you can dress the part, and you can show up and you can ask questions that show your intentionality and show that you want to do a good job, and that's going to communicate something, because the other guy that's been doing it for 20 years that that thinks that he's got the gig booked, he's just going to show up and do his regular routine. So what can you do that's above and beyond? I think that's a great takeaway. What other kind of, as you reflect back on your career and with all the fantastic people that you've been able to DJ for and everything, what's kind of the takeaway for you, or what's kind of the I want to phrase that differently. What is a takeaway that you would give to those people in the front end of their journey after you've had some time to reflect?
Well, there was times, like even at that Disney stage, right, where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I'm playing freaking, Macarena, and just like, just kill me every week. And it's like the biggest song ever, whatever. And now looking back, I go, man, that was so invaluable to go through the trenches, right? Because at the time I didn't look at it as the trenches. I just kind of was like, this is what I have to do. This is my day job, So I think sometimes you don't have that perspective until much later. Like even the recording of the mixes, I mean, and doing that bar life, like when I was double dipping, kind of doing that and Pioneer. And so I was, I can remember having to be up and driving to Pioneer at 7 a.m. because of LA traffic was just terrible. And I wouldn't finish at the bar that night. Let's say on a Friday, I knew my Fridays were going to be, Thursdays and Fridays were going to be, especially Fridays were going to be rough, because I'm not finishing until 2 a.m. By the time I get home and in bed, it's like 4, and I'm up and ready to go at 7. And, it was brutal, but I knew that this is what I was meant to do, I guess is the best way I can frame it. And so looking back now, I go, man, that it showed me work ethic. It showed me taking risks. It showed me just to stay consistent. All those different things are now staples for why I get booked, and, all those things kind of coming to fruition. So know that things are seasonal, I think is a big thing, is like, these are phases of life that are all going to add up at some point if you stay on it. And then the other thing too, I think looking back, I go, man, I was scrappy back then. I was looking for any opportunity to try to take a next step. And I think what happens is a lot of people get very complacent. They get the one gig, they're now signed with a company. And then I think it's true in any industry, not just the DJ world. I mean, look at the amount of people who finally make it. I'm a big basketball guy. So the guys who make it to the NBA, which aren't very many, How many of those really become superstars? Not very many, because they felt like they finally made that pinnacle. And I heard a guy one time, and I have to give credit to him. His name's Ed Milet. I don't know if you're familiar with Ed, but he has one of the biggest. Actually, he has the biggest, or the quickest and largest Instagram business account of anybody out there right now. He's like a business coach. And the first time I heard him speak, he said, "Stay hungry and stay laser focused." That was his 2 pieces of advice. And I think that totally translates to the DJ world, because hunger is always looked at as a negative, like, oh man, I have nothing to eat. But if you turn that around and you make that a positive, like literally you can't breathe if you don't have this food. That's the way you have to approach your business and your craft. Like you would do anything to make that happen. And that's kind of what you have to do, I think, in your craft and things, is to have that mindset. And the guys, even, you think of the guys who in the sports world, they win 1 championship. How many people really repeat? There's very few guys. Then you talk about the three-peaters, very few. Because, and a guy instantly comes to mind, Tom Brady or a Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. These guys all have this mindset of like, I'm going to stay hungry. I'm going to stay on it. I'm going to look for the next thing that's going to challenge me to push forward. So if I had to talk to my younger self, I would just remind myself that, hey, stay hungry, stay consistent, do the little things, because eventually it's all going to add up. And you may not see it right away. But I look at those bar times and I go, man, that was like some of the best times of my life. And at the time, I didn't even realize it and you probably won't until much later.
Right. Yeah. It really is about those micro decisions. The little tiny actions that you take today are actually contributing to your future. And we tend to think that it's going to be this big landmark that I stake in the ground at this time. And it's with all this fanfare. And it's like, actually, that might happen, but it's actually all those little tiny decisions that happen before and after that are going to determine your success and your path forward. When you look at your bio and you look at all the people that you've DJ'd for and you look at all these connections that you've had, and it's just no doubt that you are a world-class DJ. For you, has it really been about, because I'm just thinking of the person that's going, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I could just go, be in the NBA? Right. Just speak to that kind of fact of like, what have those represented to you in terms of these different clients that you've had, or these different opportunities to DJ these big events and high profile kind of stuff? Is the takeaway for you being able to, put it on your resume, or the things that you learned from it and how that's been able to help you propel with your goals?
Yeah, great question, actually. I think in the moment, sometimes you can have that lens you look through of like, oh my gosh, I just made it. Like, I'm doing this crazy event. But that's so short-sighted, because that's going to be gone in a couple hours. That's over. So it definitely is, I'm always asking myself, what can I learn through this? What can I, especially after the event? But even in the journey, like, so much of my work now is all about the prep. It's like I have the skill set to go walk in and basically, just do it. But if I put in the prep for that event or for that client, whatever, like, it's going to take that experience and take it to a whole nother level. So now I look at these as, okay, so I just did this crazy event. What can I take from this to now apply to my next couple of events, so that when I prep for those, it's even better, and always not settling for what you've set as your baseline. Your baseline keeps changing and elevating. And I think that's where, if you can kind of stay on that course, you're never going to get sick of what you're doing. You're going to, continually rise in the ranks, because you're always taking your stuff to the next
Is there a tip or a habit that you do regularly in your prep work that helps, make sure that your events go successfully?
Yeah, I think it sounds so simple, to be honest with you, but I think it's a mindset thing, and it's remembering what you're doing this for. Like, it's not for the paycheck. Yes, it is, but like, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't my party. This isn't my money. This is a client's money. And so if I remember that, hey, listen, I need to take care of them like they are my brother or my sister, and like treat this event like it's my own. And sometimes it gets lost because you're just, you've got other things going on, especially if you have like multiple events back to back to back. No one cares that you had an event the night before. Like, it's their event that matters, right? So you have to always have that mindset of they are the most important person on that day and throughout the time that they're contracted with you. And so I try to remember that going into every event, every moment that I have that contract with that person, that like, listen, it's not about me, it's about them. And if I make it about them, eventually it'll elevate myself through
That's
that.
so good. Couple more quick questions as we close here.
Yeah.
I think the person, again, listening right now, from a business perspective, might be tempted to think, oh, this is all this mindset stuff. But I really do believe that even the tips that you're saying in terms of right-sizing your view of the client and the goals and trying to achieve something for them that's going to be successful, this is business advice. This is like, if you want a successful business, follow this advice. Like, I think sometimes people mix up, oh, business is probably, oh, it's all about the numbers and it's all about profit. But so much of what you're talking about is what is good for any successful business or anybody that wants to go far in creating a following for any industry. Are there other business tips or advice that you've learned over the years? I don't want to discount what you've said so far, because I do believe that that is business advice. But if you were to speak specifically into that a little bit more, is there anything that you would add?
Yeah. Three things. The first is have an attorney, have a legal person, look at your contracts, make sure you're protected. That was something I got into it for the passion, man. I enjoyed the art form, and that always gets lost, is the protectiveness of like what you've built, and making sure, that you're dotting your I's, crossing your T's. I mean, we didn't have time to get into it, but like I had a partner for a little while, and then when we broke off, like I wasn't protected, they weren't protected. So we got into this unknown spot, and I just go, man, I wish I would have had that. So that's one. Secondly, also to business, finance. Make sure you have an accountant. Like, you try doing this yourself, you can get so off track so fast because you're so focused on the craft that you don't have somebody watching your shoulder. And I can't tell you how many, especially in the early years, how many times I'd get to December and I'd be like, I have no money, or I don't know how I'm going to make it work. can't even buy gifts. Like, I'm literally that poor DJ. And I had a great year. I just didn't put enough away. And every time I would like, I'm going to put another 5,000 away. I'm going to put another, and it wouldn't matter. Like, it still would run out. So until I got like, I was like, I got to get a professional involved in this. And so, having the accountant was took, and it was, yes, both of those things cost money, but they'll cost you more money if you don't have them in place. And then the last one, which I think I'm still in this phase to this day, I mean, I'm 20 plus years in, is to have a coach, a business coach or a mentor or somebody that you're checking in, and pay for it. Actually pay somebody for it, because it's different if you just get somebody that says they're going to guide you, because they don't have much interest if they're not, I mean, that's not totally accurate. I mean, they're less inclined to really dive into your business if it's more of like, hey, I'm just doing this on the side for you or whatever. Yeah. But if you're paying somebody to be a part of like helping shape who you are, and it doesn't have to be in the industry either. Like my coach, I have one, and he is in the event industry, but he's not a DJ at all. He's like actually an entertainment lawyer, a former event lawyer. So, and he's run companies and other things like that, but like he has nothing in the DJ space. He knows of it, but this is somebody that it's great because it brings another perspective that I am not looking at. And he's super objective because he's not like in the passion side of it. He's more on the analytical side of it. So I wish I would have started that journey a lot sooner. Mm-hmm. Like if I would have had that at 21, as opposed to what I am now, like who knows how much further I could be along on my journey if I would have had that mindset shift. And I didn't until much later in my career. So attorney, accountant, and then a coach.
High five on that. That is like fantastic. All three of those things are so needed. Yeah, and you're right. In the moment, you're like, oh, I don't want to spend money on that, but it's like, no, you'll pay for it. But on the other end, when you wish you didn't have to be paying for it.
Well, case in point, I just want to make this really quick with the attorney thing. We didn't have a partnership agreement, right? So when we ended, long story short, she wanted me to buy her out because she was out of the business. She wanted to get out of the industry. And that cost me $50,000. $50,000. And that agreement, if we would have had it in place, $2,500, maybe. I think it was $1,800, and I balked at it because I was like, gosh, $1,800, that's too much. And now looking back, I was a $50,000 mistake. And no one told me that going in. I thought we were going to be partners for life. You know, I didn't see her ever coming out of the business, and we're still friends to this day, but it just goes to show that like those little decisions, you never know how important they're going to be. And sometimes, again, you may not be able to do all this today, right? You may not be able to pick all of them. I don't think one's any better than the other necessarily, but start somewhere. Don't let them all like, you know, you got to start somewhere, and it'll help you along your journey to be able to afford the other things. But get one of those in place, one of those three, and start there.
Yeah, and I have a similar story. The details are a little bit different, but I had a coach say to me as we kind of reflected back on a situation that I went through. He said, everybody comes into your life for a reason, and you have to figure out what that is. Some people come into your life for a season, and they're going to be in there for a certain period of time, and then they'll come off. But occasionally, people will come into your life for a lifetime. But you can't jump to that. We often think, okay, I'm in this new relationship. Oh, this is going to be a lifetime. You don't know. And it's very rare that somebody really does come into your life for a lifetime. But if we just as business owners and as leaders of ourselves and really thinking about self-leadership can think about, okay, what is the reason that this person or this situation is happening right now? Is this a season, and is it going to change? Is it going to start? Is it going to end? And then very few things actually become a lifetime type thing. So it's just interesting hearing your story that, you know, that partnership was for a season, but you could have been proactive or you could have set up the appropriate boundaries, even though, you know, in the moment you're like, oh, it's going to work out. Everything's going to be great. We're going to be together forever. That's such great advice. Any last word for us for the person on the front end of their journey becoming a wedding DJ or just getting into this industry? Any last words for that person?
Stay humble, and remember, it's always about relationships. Those are two things that luckily have been a part of my DNA since I started in this game. But if you can keep those two things, you're going to go so much further than the person who thinks it's all about them and forgets about relationships. So those things are going to take you so much further than any product or service you can provide. If you can stay humble and build on relationships, that's everything.
Thanks for spending some time with us, Brian.
No worries.
I want to thank you so much for being a listener of Wedding DJ School. You can find us over at weddingdjschool.com. Also, you can text Wedding DJ to 44222. We will ask for your email address, and in return, we will send you all of the podcast action guides for season 1 of Wedding DJ School. So you can do that for free just by texting Wedding DJ to 44222. Lots of actionable advice that you can put to use right away, all for free. Well, we're going to continue talking with leaders in the wedding entertainment industry. We will be back next week with a new episode.